Check your volume. Yep.
It's muted. Oh, I'm not muted anymore. I thought I unmuted that, but I missed the button, I guess. So anyway, hello there, everyone. Today is Sunday, February 23rd of 2025, and welcome to this month's second VATcast, which is pretty unusual, but we're making up for January, as I promised. We do have a great show lined up for you guys today, featuring our guest, Peppy himself, and we'll be discussing OSU, the history of OSU mapping, and other things. So before we get started, I do have a few things I want to mention. This show is hosted by the Vocaloid Appreciation Team, which is a community for Vocaloid appreciators, although you don't have to be one to participate. We do things like the Vocaloid Mapping Contest, we do watch parties, organize collaborative mapping projects, and just hang out sometimes. Today, for example, we did a bunch of Gartic phone for like 2 to 3 hours and got some hilarious results, which you can see on our Twitter. And if you're interested in supporting or participating in any of those things, feel free to join our Discord community, and you can find the links for that below. We do also encourage audience interaction, so we're always monitoring the chat throughout the show. If you have questions you'd like to ask on the show, or you want to ask Peppy, just put them in the chat, and we might ask them on the show. With that being said, go ahead and get started. How you doing, Peppy?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
I'm well. How has your month been?
My month. Well, we've done a few big releases on the laser side of things and web, I guess. So it's been pretty hectic over the last week, just getting everything out and making sure stuff isn't falling over and being completely destroyed by people choosing weird team names and whatnot. You know, the normal.
That is pretty normal. How about you, Half Slashed?
Yeah, I've been watching all these cool changes rolling out, so that's kind of it. I mean, I can't too. I'm working on a project or two, but I can't say too much on that now. So
very exciting. And Nafi?
I broke my phone screen yesterday. Life is hard. But everything else has been going well. We actually tried out the laser multiplayer yesterday, and it was a lot of fun because usually we have so many modes in our server that either we all play on normal diffs and everything sucks, or we all play on higher diffs and everything sucks. So people playing on Mania and coming in first place among all beyond all the standard players was a lot of fun. We did that for like 2 hours? Yeah.
Honestly, like
that's a bit of an unfortunate one. The Mania score scaling is a lot more weighted towards the upper end, isn't it?
Yeah, it was just funny though.
The ability for people to play different maps while playing together is just so nice. There's been so many times where, you know, you're an experienced player, you want to get your friends into OSU, but you don't want to sit there for like 5 million hours while like just playing normal diffs. So it's just really nice to be able to have fun yourself at the same time.
Yeah, it's one of those when we finally get to adding features like this after 10 years of not doing so, it feels like we've done the community disservice by not having it there until now, because like as you say, people could have benefited from this so many years ago, but we got there eventually.
Most definitely. Well, I would say this month, I mean, it's only been half a month, I guess, since the last one, but a couple new things popped up in terms of sort of recent news. We have the monthly beat mapping contest for this month, which is pretty cool because it's the 5th year that they've been doing it, and so they went back to the first restriction, the first gimmick, which was only straight sliders. So I think that's pretty cool. We'll see what they come up with. I'm really interested. Yeah, I know, crazy. But what I'm really interested in seeing is actually sort of how the average mapper improved in those 5 years. Like take the exact same gimmick and how much better or worse or the same, right? What's the end result after 5 years of continuous mapping improvement?
With the monthly mapping contest, I haven't been following them very closely, but is it like a lot of the same mappers participating each month? Like, do you think you're going to see the mappers from 5 years ago coming back?
You certainly could. I think it's. I don't follow it that closely, and this is probably more of like a pishy fat type of question.
Yeah.
But my understanding is that they have pretty consistent participation, which is really nice. But they do see new and returning faces all the time. So there's certainly a lot of people who are like just there every time. There's people who are occasionally there, and there's people who never participated and decided this time is the time. So
We'll
it's
say that just contests in general attract like a certain section of the mapping community, and then those rotate in and out as over time. So you will see returning faces come into those contests, but I think that their incentives go down after they've gotten like the elite mapper title or whatever for winning a bunch of them. So stuff like that will cycle people out.
That's where we have to make new tiers of badges, don't we, to get them to come back? Although I don't know if
Maybe.
that's our goal in the first place.
Do you
Yeah,
ever?
I mean, you can bring back aspirant type suffixes to elite mappers, and then.
Do you ever
Ooh.
think about like badge sort of inflation, like making too many badges and devaluing the current ones, or is that not really ever a concern for you?
I think that's always been a concern for me, but at this point, it's kind of out of my hands as well. People want the badges to exist, so I've just
Yeah,
kind
right.
of let that
Yeah.
one go. As for like user titles, I think I still have a pretty tight control over that one.
Oh my-
User titles and groups, like different teams being created in the community. I'm always like, oh my god, you guys want another team? What is it this time? I don't know what the most recent one was, but we've got like the support team going online, and also teams just wanting more exposure for themselves. Oh, the tournament committee as well. That was another recent one.
Mm,
Yep.
yeah. I
And
was about
like
to
it
make
makes sense.
Yeah, I was about to make a comment. It's just like I feel like White's question there on badge inflation. I hope no one from the tournament community was watching this podcast because that's a huge topic over there.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
What's sort of your metric for deciding user titles, or not necessarily user titles, but like you have like the elite mapper type titles, right? That aren't badges. I don't remember exactly what you call them, but
Yeah. The metric for it is if I can get my brain around it existing as another user title. Generally, they've been a very historic thing, and we've only given out probably a few every year. So it's like we have to really make sure that the people we're giving it to, the reasons we're giving them out for, are valid and actually mean a lot in the community.
Yeah, definitely. I was just mainly surprised to see one for Locus. I was like, oh, a mapping contest that has one that isn't like a Spire. That's pretty unusual.
Yeah. Yeah, I think with Lucas, there's been a lot of work going on in the behind the scenes to get it all together, and we just wanted to give it as much as we could in terms of rewards, just to get everyone on board with it.
Yeah, it's one of the bigger contests that I've seen in my time. So
Yeah, and I think with things like that, it's also about setting a precedent, right? If we can make that work well, then there's potential that there's future iterations of it or similar contests.
That would be
Definitely.
so cool.
I think inside the team, it's been one of our aspirations is to do something like BMS of fighters in the OS community, and it's never, there's been things which have come close, but never really on that level. So I think that's where this whole thing came from, led by Mangamizer mostly.
Shout out to my man Mango Miser. He's so cool.
And Matrix, I think he was involved a lot behind the scenes.
Definitely.
Okay.
So there's also, in other news, we had the Skin of the Year 2024 voting. Do you keep up with like the skinning scene, Peppy?
Generally I do, but like I couldn't tell you which entries were in that contest. I haven't actually gone through them properly yet.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there is a 1 day and 23 hours remaining to go vote for it, so you still have
Wait, I
time.
haven't voted yet. Yeah.
So with the voting process, can you actually like, is there a video you can watch and then figure out your votes from that, or is it like gonna take me several hours to go through
No.
each skin and play with them?
The latter. There's I don't know, probably 50 skins here.
I
Yeah,
think
so that's quite involved.
I remember
Yeah.
when they had like dedicated themed contests hosted by the same people. They had video showcases, but since Skin of the Year is of every single released skin, it would be really, really long.
Definitely. Yeah, that's kind of the problem is, you only have realistically time to look at just a couple of them, I feel like. I just look for the
Yeah.
Vocaloid ones.
Well, everybody that posts to the skin forum is pretty good about posting a bunch of preview pictures, so it's not like you have to take forever to download them and then look. You can just kind of flip through the forums.
Yeah.
Yeah, the skinning is really like it's even in laser it's kind of lacking. Like we have all this new skinning stuff where you can customize the screen layout and whatnot, but the core skinning is not really there yet. Like we don't have song select, and we haven't really extended the existing the ability to do more things, to do more custom textures, custom animations yet. And I mean that's something we'll get to eventually, but also just like the in-game skin selection interface is absolutely crap. Like it's still just a drop-down menu, right? So even in-game, getting a preview, figuring out what you're getting into when you select a skin is very hard. You're going completely based off name. So that's something I'd really like to see improved.
For sure. One thing that I wanted skinned, or wanted to skin was the actual shape of the slider bodies. I wanted to make them like rectangular, but like when you add like a bend, it's always got that curve to it. And you can change like the head of a circle to a square, and there's been a ranked map that does that. And I wanted to commit fully to the bit and use like rectangular sliders, but I couldn't do that.
So how would you see that working? Like actually changing the shape of the slider on screen?
Yeah, like
remove the
literally. I
curves?
mean, it wouldn't actually change like how the slider is played or how the the hit circle is played, right? I mean, like I said, there is a ranked map with turning all the circles into squares, but it doesn't work with the sliders. You can change the slider head to a square, but the body itself is like an oval, effectively, right? It doesn't look right. So that'd be super cool if you can get like these hard curves or the hard angles on like 90 degrees or whatever on the sliders and such. Because the reason I wanted to do it is I wanted to do a Tetris themed map and use like Tetris sliders, but it doesn't work because it just looks awful.
As soon as you get a snaking slider, the whole illusion is broken, kind of thing.
Any
Then
slider
again-
breaks it. Any slider breaks it. It's terrible. So you can do
Well,
like
if you've
just
got
circles
control
only.
over the map, can't you just map the sliders to not have curves?
No, like you can, but the actual shape of the slider itself is like it's all curved, right? It's not like a rectangle. Even a straight slider is not a rectangle. If you get rid of the hit, like the head of the
Oh,
slider
yeah,
and the
okay,
tail
just
of the object,
corners. Yep.
yeah, right. It's the corners that are problematic. So that would be cool if you could skin the actual shape of the slider in some way.
Yeah, I can't envisage how that would work in the skinning system, but we'll see.
One
I
more
think it's
thing.
really cool where laser skins are going. So that'll be really interesting. Kind of see what people get to do with it too.
For sure.
Especially when song select is working, because like I would always see all the really insane skins people would make for like Step Mania that would be like it would look like a completely different game. So
Yeah, I mean, Stepmania is a different situation where I think you can actually script things from a skin, and we've never really committed to adding scripting support in skins. So it's always about changing the texture of things, changing their position, but never actually changing behaviors.
mhm.
So I think OS is always going to be a bit more limited than Stepmania and other games, but people get around those limitations one way or another
True.
via methods we usually don't approve of as developers.
True.
Definitely. Then the other thing that happened this month was community choice for 2024. I'm not sure if I'm actually curious. Did you vote in anything, Peppy? There?
I didn't know. I had like it's really sad, but I only had like 6 maps on my list to vote for.
That sounds like a
Because,
mapper
like,
right there.
because I always play the really old maps if I play at all. So yeah, I have very few from 2024, and the ones I do have is just like testing on the staging server where we only have recent maps available. Otherwise, they're not ranked. So uh, they're probably all like no fail silly plays rather than actually enjoying maps. So no, I didn't vote, but don't tell people that.
You just told everybody.
Yeah, it's public knowledge now.
Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't vote either. Like
I
I don't know.
didn't
I
vote
remember
either.
the last time I voted in community choice actually.
To be fair, I didn't vote either, so you know.
Yeah.
But I barely play the game these days. Well, one thing that's really cool about the community vote is that they give stats on like the number of beat maps and difficulties relative to the previous year. So there was a 63% increase in the number of maps made in 2024 than in 2023. What do you think of that, Peppy? You know, you see that probably every year it just keeps increasing. Is that always a good thing for you, or do you ever get concerned about like maybe bloating, you know, the amount of maps?
Yeah, I was interested to see that increase as well because we've had a slight decrease in like the active users on us over the same period, so that implies that more people are getting into mapping than before, or existing mappers are just churning out more maps than before. One of those is probably more beneficial to the community than the other, the first one. But yeah, no, it's good to see. Looking back at previous years, I think there was a 1 year period where we did have a decrease in maps, and I don't know if that was because we were more stringent on the ranking criteria or something, or we just had like, I don't know. We also have, if you're looking at the number of ranked maps, then that is also artificially limited by the number of maps we allow to be ranked per day. So I think that has also shot up in the last year or two.
Do you remember generally like what time frame that year where there were less maps was? Just curious because of the ranking criteria thing.
Sometime in the last, I think we were just reviewing the last few years, and one of them had a slight decrease. May not have been OS rule set, may have been Taiko or Catch.
Oh, okay.
At which point it's probably less relevant, but yeah. And I just remember seeing one decrease of like 20%.
Do you have a favorite
remember
child of all the game
specific
modes?
time periods in a standard where like yeah, things were really stringent, not ranking criteria based, but we've had stringent times pass for sure.
Yeah. And this year, well, late last year, we just like opened the floodgates, I guess.
Oh, I mean, so depending on which mapper you ask, it's like every year the floodgates have been opened more and more. So some mappers get really touchy about this, where they're just like, "Oh my god, like I loved these maps, and now they're not around because the floodgates are just so open," and you have that going on. So
Yeah, but I mean, I've kind of been behind these decisions to an extent because I still like I'm not directly setting the ranking criteria these days, but I have asked that people ping me before things go live, so I can have a final word in quotations. But yeah, the way I see things is that there's different eras of mapping, and if you like the mapping from a certain era, you can go back to the era, or there's still going to be people mapping in that style. It's not going to be the prominent style maybe, but they're still going to exist. And one of the things with like opening the floodgates further is that as time goes on, we have 50,000 plus ranked maps now, and like there's only so much you can do with mapping, and I think a lot of the ideas have been exhausted. So we need to be a bit more lenient as we go forward, just to keep the creativity flowing. Let people create things that haven't been done before.
yeah, Actually, what do you think about essentially our tools for finding content? So the amount of content we have, like that is getting ranked, has gone up over time. What do you think of the means that users can use to find the stuff that they would like to find?
Yeah, it is one of my concerns, and that's kind of why we've always had the limit of the number of ranked maps that can the number of maps that can be ranked each day. That was something I imposed because I didn't want the beat map listing to get too out of hand. I wanted to make it so people that are tracking the game each day can go to the listing and read through each new beat map or play through each new beat map without it being a huge chore. And I think we've kind of gone past the point where people are doing that as such. I don't know how many people are going through every beat map that comes in, except for, are there any completionists which are actually staying up to date with the flow? I'm not sure about that.
Probably
Um,
not.
Yeah.
I know people that are very active about it, but not like necessarily 100%.
Yeah, so like I think it is on the back of our minds is making different ways to discover maps, and like personally, if I'm going to be discovering maps these days, it's going to be in a multiplayer room because I just really enjoy that method of discovery where everyone's, especially with the laser the queue system where anyone can directly add maps. It's kind of like that whole thing where streamers would take requests from their chat for maps they're playing next, but it's actually in a multiplayer room where you can interact with it and everything. So yeah, I think that's a really good method of discovery, is just the crowdsourcing, that everyone comes together and brings their favorite maps to the table. And also with the playlist system in Laser, I have seen that being used quite well for people, putting together really good curated lists of beat maps. And if you find someone you enjoy, someone you share a style of mapping with, you can go, find their playlists, and yeah.
Yeah, multiplayer is definitely, like, personally loved finding maps that way. Though what I have found is that a lot of, usually what ends up happening is the same maps get popularized through multiplayer, timeless stuff. So it's actually, you'll find a lot of commonality between maps played in multiplayer now versus maps played in multiplayer in 2016 or 2017 or something like that. The community likes to kind of spread like the lore of these like maps through the ages. So
Yeah, for sure. It's always good to see the old maps coming back up.
That's definitely an interesting trend, I feel like. I think Heffy was talking about like one or two streams ago that in the tournament scene, they're switching towards grabbing older maps that have already been made rather than making new like commissioned ones or custom ones. So it seems to be a sort of an overall trend. People like the old maps.
yeah, it's the pendulum swinging back is what it is. So the pendulum swung forward is like, we don't have enough existing maps, and then people get new maps that fill it. It's like, that's not actually what we wanted. So now we're gonna swing back. It's like we're gonna make it work with whatever again. So that's all it is.
I always enjoy seeing the variety in multiplayer, and plus, a lot of times I go in, at least one or two people are gonna pretty consistently throw in unranked maps, which always take me by surprise when I finish it and it doesn't add to my anything. I was like, oh wait, this wasn't ranked. Oh, okay.
It's an
Well,
interesting one because
oh.
there was a point where I'm sure you guys being kind of old school know this, but there was a point where graveyard maps would actually get deleted after a certain period of months. Like completely nuked from existence. And I had to turn that off at some point because people were like, stop deleting these maps, we're playing them. I'm like, oh, the meaning of graveyard has really changed over the years, hasn't it?
Wow, that's got to be a lot. That's got to be I've been a long time ago. Can't even remember that time.
Yeah, it's probably about 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago at this point.
Oh, it's gonna be longer than that. I think I'm probably closer to
No, it
15,
looks like
maybe even 16. Like,
If
it's
you
been
spent enough time on the forums, you'll find random posts being like, "This map was deleted," or some message like that. Because like I did a batch run of that once, and it like accidentally wrote that message to the forum posts, which are not even related to beat maps. I think it's like around the place.
All right. Well, look, my litmus test for this is I went to Echo's user page right now, and I wanted to see what his oldest graveyarded map was, and it's in 2008. So unless he re-uploaded it after this, yeah, it's been at least 17 years.
Okay, well, there were also some rules behind the deletion. Like, I think if anyone downloaded the beat map recently, it wouldn't be deleted. So it wasn't just
Oh.
a across the board deletion. There was some activity rules involved. I'd have
Alright.
to dig them up.
Now I'm furious. If that was the case, if this was an exception to that, I'm like thinking, why was someone downloading this? Like this map, this is like an easy difficulty and a beginner, and it's just it's not even available for download. So maybe this actually was applied. Oh,
That's the
Yeah.
without even opening that beat map, I know what that is. That's the ending track from Full Moon. Search for Full Moon o Sagashite.
oh God! All right. Wow.
Happy
I'm
is in
not sure I played that
shambles.
beat map, but yeah, like that's back in the era. I think Echo and I were both watching that anime series, so.
Okay.
But it does. So that one is one which says this beat map is not currently available for download, right?
Yeah, it doesn't. So I guess it's like they still exist on VSS, it just cannot be downloaded. All right, that makes some sense.
Yeah.
So
Crazy.
maybe it was in 2009 sometime. If I'm
No, it
guessing
wasn't.
correctly.
It wasn't that long ago. I remember in like 2014 trying to download maps, and one month they would exist, and then the next month they couldn't re-download them, and it wasn't because the map were deleted, and I'd be like, oh. So yeah, it's just it wouldn't always come up, because
Hmm.
if it was a map people were playing, it would usually be downloaded, and it wouldn't have gotten auto-deleted. It was like their graveyarded souls passing on to the next life.
Oh.
Yeah,
Slash only
and
played mainstream maps back then.
Yeah.
the problem is like these days, back then, I was all like, well, we want to delete those maps because we have limited server storage, and it's an issue if we run out. But these days, I'm like, why did we ever do that? Because we've lost that history forever now.
Well, also you just don't have the same like hardware limitations, right? Like
Yeah,
storage is a
exactly.
lot cheaper than it used to be, both from like a hardware perspective, and then cloud infrastructure proliferated after the OS started, right? So I could see
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Back when we first started running the game, a guy that I met on IRC, if you know what that is. He was living in Canada. I think he just had his own servers hosted in his basement, and he took on the US service until the point where we crashed all his servers, and he just like disappeared. He's like, "Nope, I'm done with you guys."
You just got to use
You're very
like what
Canadian.
torrent all of it. In order
Yeah.
to download maps, you have to be willing to upload them.
Oh no.
You say torrent, but you know that Stable actually has a torrent client inside it.
What?
What?
Like there was a point in like 2010, 2011 where I don't know if you remember the name, but Intermezzo, he was a developer that was working on stuff including the OSZ2 format is mostly done by him. Yeah, part of the whole OSZ2 thing was that we wanted to make the file format in a way that could work with BitTorrent protocol wise. And it did work, and we had it all working. And the idea was that we would have like a, what do you call it, a super seed, I think it was the name, where like one server would be seeding everything, and that would be the main OS server, and then users that opted in would also be able to peer-to-peer the maps to each other. And it all kind of worked, but we never really rolled it out for one reason or another.
That's
I
crazy.
think it was probably for the better. Just like in terms of like liability and stuff, right? I don't know if you wanted to envision a world where OS was just like the Pirate Bay, you know? It's just like, yes, it's everyone's got the seed to regenerate the vast library of beat maps anywhere in the world if we get taken down or something.
Well,
So,
see, back in that era, we didn't have featured artists. We didn't have the budget to do anything like that. So
yeah.
it was kind of a free for all anyway. Like I was just waiting for some record label to reach out and be like, take everything down, and it never really happened. I think we were just lucky that that didn't happen. Maybe it's because we didn't like cover the whole site with ads, and you know, there's a lot of potential reasons that we didn't get really taken on by the large corporations, but and maybe else was just so small that it wasn't seen as a issue. But yeah, like I think if we did have, even like not considering anything else, having the name BitTorrent anywhere was something we were, I think, looking to avoid because I didn't want to associate that with us. Like it just has such negative a pirate connotation to it.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I
remember I
mean,
downloaded it.
LimeWire was not far behind. I'm just saying, like.
True.
Well,
Yep.
what's the other really cool thing that happened was Teams. I think it's Happy's newest favorite feature.
Oh yeah, Teams.
Teams is super
I was
cool.
Having that in freestyle in the same update is crazy.
I know.
Yeah, Teams is like a 15-year-old feature request or something. So
Was
it's
it
really
like
cool to see that. Yeah.
was it like planned ahead of time to release those together, or did it just happen to line up like that?
No, it's always just how the dice roll. All the features kind of were ready to go at the same time. It's like, you know, there's other people on the team which are like, shouldn't we roll this out like one by one? I'm just like, nah. Okay, we'll deal with that later. Just turn it all on. And like Spaceman Atlas was working mostly on the BSSV2, the one in laser. And he's like, okay, we've tested on staging. We still need to test on production, so it's probably like a few weeks away. I'm like, nah, we can get out tomorrow with the build. He's like, But it also all went quite well. I don't know if that's an outlier here, but stuff didn't break too bad.
Yeah, I'm actually really shocked that it just kind of worked. Like that's not unusual for, dev teams in general.
Yeah, it's probably because like the few features, like I did a lot of the code review of the freestyle and the not the teams so much, but the beatmap submission as well. And it went through quite a few rounds of review, and we were pretty confident. I don't want to say pretty confident. We were moderately confident that things were working. And I guess that's the thing. Recently, more than in the past, we've like moved a bit slower and had more checks in place, more review process in place. So the chances of stuff breaking should be lower. So that I guess it's good to see that is the outcome. Whereas in previous years, it's just me code to production stuff breaking was like the norm, right?
I was hoping you would tell me that due to your like enlightenment in like CI/CD that OS would never break in production ever again, but
There's a fine balance there, right? Because the more checks you add in place, the slower you move. And I think we've hit the
Yep.
point where we're doing everything by the book, and I know I am kind of frustrated with how slow things can move at times. So I've been pushing back, I guess, a bit in the direction of moving more rapidly. Yeah, and it's kind of like we've been working. We're a very small team on the laser client, at least. There's 4 of us maybe working on it. At the point you could say full time or part time. and because we've worked together for so many years, there's a certain degree of trust that you build with each other, and also just understanding of what can go wrong and when it will go wrong. So the processes which we've kind of built to keep ourselves in check become less important. They can kind of take the back seat, and we can, focus less on writing 200 new tests for every new feature we come in, because we've already trained ourselves to write things in a way which will not break, even if the tests don't exist.
I mean, you do have, 15 years of, development behind you, experience-wise, so you kind of probably have developed a lot of procedures and such to make things go a little bit more smooth.
Yeah, and the other thing is, like, because I do all the infrastructure stuff myself, I have a huge amount of confidence that I can fix things when they go wrong and fix them very fast. And I think that's always kind of what's kept things going over the years, is that I tend to not care too much. Well, in the past, I haven't cared so much about getting things right the first time, because I know that they can be fixed, and like I enjoy that process of fixing shit when it goes wrong. So yeah, it's a kind of a different direction we're moving right now, where we're doing things more correctly in terms of process, and I'm not yet sure how to feel about it.
I will say, I mean, I guess it does take the excitement of firefighting out of it a bit, but
Oh,
well,
don't
I mean,
worry. There's still plenty of firefighting going on. There's no shortage.
yeah, you can move to the social fires instead. There's always
Yeah.
those. Those will never end.
Yeah, it's getting worse by the day on that side.
Yeah. But yeah, teams are actually really good for you. So I like them a lot. So that's nice to see.
Yeah, I mean, Teams is a cool one because like it immediately gives people a new way of adding flair to their profile or their users or their groups of friends, even without any of the features we have planned out for Teams. Just having the flag there, it's like we were kind of making this decision whether to roll it out with just the team flags or wait for things like team chat to come online or team leaderboards. I'm like, well, the basic features are already like, I think the majority of the community is going to be happy with just that, even if nothing comes in the future. So that's why we kind of rolled it out as is.
I think generally, something that's like low-hanging fruit that people tend to like, just more expression on the profile. All people always love that. Especially if it ties back to stuff they've done. Like, I know I was super excited to see guest difficulties and nominated maps and stuff on my user page. So Teams are just like another thing like that. So that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the chat channels for Teams is actually ready to go, so that's probably going to come out this week.
I'm gonna start using the in-game chat again. Oh my god.
Are you really, though? Everyone's on Discord.
Yes, I'm gonna message everybody every time I come online. I'm gonna be like, "Good morning."
mean-
No, we'll have literally just the good morning channel, but in game.
Yes, exactly. It's
So
something,
funny.
and then I can drag everybody into multiplayer. I'll just drop the multiplayer link, and I'll be like, "Come."
For context, Peppy, in our server, we just have a channel that all people do is say good morning, like GM. And for some
I
reason,
heard
like
about that
10
earlier.
people a day just are just a good morning.
I mean, it's kind of this. We have a introductions channel in the dev server, and I'm not sure how many people read that, but we still have people posting it every day. It's like, it's cool to read, but also it doesn't really have much of a point to it.
The way the mentorship handles this is, people get to post once and then they essentially graduate from that channel immediately.
Right.
We'll get so usually the multiple posts are coming from the orgs themselves, like usually with famously bad puns, like Yaspo is used to. Like, that's what I remember.
Yeah. Everyone gets onboarded with a terrible pun, except now, because we're all really lazy and burned out.
Yeah.
That just means you need to move on from puns and move to MS Paint drawings of their icons and be like, "I see you. You're here. Welcome." Change it up.
Oh my goodness. You know what I could do is just ask ChatGPT to make it for me. That would
Yeah,
probably
I'm like, you just opened the door for more effort. Like, it's like, are you trying to
Yeah.
invite AI into this? Like,
AI is the way.
Like, oh, let's create more. Well, for people that don't want to create, ooh, that's ugh.
Right.
Right.
So what's coming next for teams? What's your next step?
Well, after we rolled out, we had quite a bit of feedback on what people want to see next, and it's things like being able to transfer the ownership of teams, potentially change team names and acronyms once in a while. But internally, as I said, we have the chat channel coming and leaderboard support. So there's already like a leaderboard internal to the team where you can see, team members' ranked score PP in a single leaderboard, but we want to also add it to per beat map. And then, yeah, I don't know what's coming after that. It's going to be a bit more about what the community wants to see from it. And I know there's a lot of people being like, we want clan wars now. That sounds like an interesting concept, but I'm not sure if we'll be doing that as an official system. I have heard from another developer that they already had something like that planned out, like as a third-party service, and they kind of want API access to teams to get the final piece in place, have it use the official teams with their system. So that might come online, and that might be quite cool. It's always nice to have things managed for us by the community, especially when it involves like, you want to run a live service like a matchmaking or something. It's always good to have people involved which are going to keep that running. It kind of needs upkeep, right? You need to keep the pulse of the system and make sure people are getting correctly placed with other teams and figure out the seasons and the prizes and everything else that's going on. And I think the internal OS team, we're already at our limits with just handling. I mean, even the World Cup, it's not all internal, but there are people keeping it going from what you could classify as the internal OS team. So having more like live services running for something like a clan system, we would definitely need that to happen in the community, and we would just be supporting it from our end. But yeah, it's going to be based on feedback, I think, as for what features come after once we have planned the few things we have planned.
One idea that I just kind of thought of was how people want mapper aliases and things like that. One thing that I've always kind of wanted is to have like mapper groups. So maybe one idea you could do it is like have maps attributed to a team instead of like an individual, and you have these mapper groups forming in these teams. I thought that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, that could be interesting. I guess if we go in that kind of direction, the next thing people are going to be asking for is to be able to join multiple teams at once, which we have already heard multiple times.
Yeah, I'm definitely feeling that, but I've had so many people ask me to join their team, and there's at least one other team I'd really like to join, but I can't because I'm already in one, and I can't pick the current one.
I feel like if we do support that at some point, it's going to still be like you choose the team that shows up in your profile, but you can sit in multiple teams.
Yep. That's a good way to do it.
Still probably want a cap, otherwise people just join every team.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Although I think the scaling of how big a team is already helps a lot with that. Since you can't just have infinity people joining unless they all happen to have supporter. So maybe they should just get supporter.
Well, I also have seen like teams that are so big that they run out of slots. They just make a second team for the same group, and they just sort of link between each other. So it, like, then you just have like bloat of like 50, of the same gotcha weebs.
Oh my
50
God.
teams of the same team, effectively, right?
And then you have others like making the same team name, same logo and flag, but not actually being related to them, being like, yeah, we're the 53rd group.
Yeah. Great stuff. Yeah, it's a slippery slope for sure.
One thing at a time with that one.
100%. The foundation here seems to work very well, though. I was impressed. But anyway, so let's kind of like back up a little bit and talk about the start of OSU, right? So Peppy, can you talk a little bit about what you did before coming to OSU, and then how or I guess I should say OS, but sorry.
Say
Say
Um,
whatever you need to.
Yeah, I know. But how did we get here, right? From the very beginning.
Yeah. How far back do you want to go?
Well, I'm curious, like, what you did before you came to start developing this as well.
Yeah, so I guess my job history before us, if you want to call it that, I coming out of university, or in the last university, we had to kind of do work experience at a company, and the company I was working for was an ebook, an online ebook store, I guess you could say. And I was working on like a system they had where it was all about kind of like selling the whole library of books to school libraries, universities, that kind of thing, where they could have on-demand access. So they're paying like an initial fee, and they get access to like 2 million books, depending on how the students access them. Yeah, so I was working on that system, and it was originally a Java, a J2EE, like a huge enterprise wank system, and no one wanted to touch the code. I kind of came in as, you know, a student, and they had really low expectations, but then I kind of managed to fix a lot of the issues with that system that other people weren't willing to touch. And it was mostly just by working around the whole enterprise stuff that was going on there. And yeah, eventually I basically joined that company full time after graduating from university, and I rewrote that system from J2EE Java into .NET, ASP.NET, and kind of I guess I was lead for that project. I saw that through to completion, but kind of like halfway through, I started developing OS in my free time. It started out as just like a project in 2007, I think it was. On my birthday, we had a LAN party. If people don't know what a LAN party is, we get together with our PCs. It was just a group of 10 friends or so, and I was just testing out this new XNA framework, which is something Microsoft released. It was a C# game development framework, which worked on both PC and Xbox. So the whole thought was that, yeah, people are gaming on PC, and we have these new hardware consoles we want to sell. So let's make a framework where it's really easy to make games across both platforms, and we can, you know, reap the rewards on both sides. So I made this OS game, this Oendan clone. It was called Oendan Test, and yeah, that was because we all had, like, it was the era of Nintendo DS, and we all had flash carts, and we were downloading all the weird Japanese games out there, and Oendan happened to be one of the ones that we really enjoyed playing. And I was always like, I want to play different songs in this game, songs which aren't actually loaded in, and there was no editor for it. So I just made this ON Test app, which was basically dropped you straight into the editor. I think you can, there's probably videos and screenshots of this, but it like basically had no UI. You would drop into the editor, and you would hear the track playing and place beats down, place objects down with no beat snap or anything. None of the stuff you're used to. So it was like real time, trying your best to get the timing right. And then we would pass these OSU files around amongst friends, and everyone really enjoyed it. And like some of my friends were like, you need to post this online. So that's kind of where it started. Posted it to the internet to I guess I think I just made my own forum for it. I made a little website for it, and within a month or so we posted it. I say we, it was just me. I posted it online, and it got a bit of media coverage originally, and it was enough to kind of just like kickstart it into this huge project it's become.
That's awesome. One thing that I've always kind of wondered in relation to that is, I'm guessing you were like the first OS mapper, right? So how does that change how you think about where we are today?
Um, Interesting question. So I originally I got into mapping, or I got into creating OS because I wanted to map the songs which I enjoyed at the time. So every map I made was like a song which was, on my top 10 playlist or whatever. And in the early days, it was always interesting to, I was, I guess, the first mapper. I made the first map, but I wasn't the second mapper. The second mapper was one of my friends who made one of the other early tracks. It was always good to. It was always, I guess, what triggered such a positive response in my head was having other people map the songs they liked, and then discovering songs which they liked that I also liked, and it became this whole music discovery thing for me as well. And in the first year or two after we posted stuff online, I think I was basically the whole nomination ranking team as it's known today, the BAT, which didn't exist. It was just me going through these forum threads and being like, yeah, the timing's, roughly good enough within 10 milliseconds. Let's make it ranked. Yeah, and it just kind of expanded from there, I guess. I got some of my friends to help out with approving maps, and it was also simple back in the day. And even mapping styles, someone does something, like someone made a stream for the first time, and I'm like, you can't expect people to play this with the mouse. What are you doing? That can't be ranked, kind of thing. And here we are today with the most insane people playing with mouse and tablets.
I imagine keyboard support helped quite a bit for playing those streams.
That's
did
right.
you
Yeah,
have-
keyboard support wasn't there in the first place. It was only mouse buttons.
Yeah, did you see streams and then we're like, oh, we need to add keyboard support? Or
No,
how'd
no,
that
it was
go?
always I was always keeping up with the community in terms of feature requests. So I don't think a lot of the stuff which came into us was like me being like, we need this. It was more like people playing the game being like, get this in, make this happen, or we quit.
Yeah, so something I found interesting when looking at older stuff was that the mouse and tablet stuff actually used to have a lot more trade-offs where if you had the mouse, you'd have more stability to follow some of the more space streams, but the jumps would be harder. And then with tablet, it's the jumps are easier, but you don't have as much stability, so following streams that got really spaced was harder. What do you think about how the input methods, the availability of more input methods? How do you think they affected, I guess, map?
I mean, I want to say it was like a few years before people even figured out that tablets were a good device to use for us. And yeah, it definitely was like when that happened, the whole mapping meta changed. I don't want to say overnight, but within months. And has there been? I mean, I'm jumping way forward now, but in the recent times, there seems to be a good population of people going back to mouse from tablet. I don't know if that's just a meme thing, but
Well, I know that from a mount from cursor stability perspective, it does make sense, especially since the PP system now rewards some of those very spaced streams a bit more. So there's that, and then also people just want to be cool and stand out as mouse players.
And also, wireless mice have gotten so much better than they used to be. I only recently finally switched like a year ago to using one because, they would always have they wouldn't have much latency for an average computer user, but it would be enough that OSU would be suffering. So, either you're using a wire and it's getting stuck on everything, or you have extra lag baked in. And now top-end mice have pretty low latency, though, so that's not a problem.
I remember one of my favorite mice for playing OS was, I think, the Logitech G500 might have been. Anyway, it had a interchangeable battery, and it was a wireless mouse, one of the really early ones, but it was really low latency. The trade-off was that the battery lasted like 2 hours, so it came with a battery charger USB battery charger, and you had to like hot switch the batteries. So I was like, I love the mouse, but I would be gaming all day, and like, halfway through the gaming session, your mouse just stops working, and you're like, gosh.
Oh no.
It's got a button on the back, and you hit it, and like the battery flies out. It's got a spring-loaded thing. You shove the other battery, and you're like, yeah, keep going.
Yeah.
But yeah, wireless mice have gotten amazing. They're so not just low latency, but so light as well.
All right. So I'm curious. So in like the first, I'd say 3 years of OS mapping, what do you like? Can you think of a mapper that caused you to have like the most visceral reaction upon looking at their maps?
Sorry, just to correct myself, it was the Logitech G7 was the mouse, not the G500.
okay.
That was a later one.
Okay.
Anyway, I think the first mapper I can recall by username was AG, if that rings a bell for you.
AG, yeah. I'm actually
Yeah.
familiar with that. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think because he was a bit of a character as well, and he was always like, pushing back against us when we had issues with the way he was mapping. So that's a name that's really stuck with me.
Yeah, I used to talk with Blissful Yoshi a bit, and he enlightened me about AG. And I looked at his maps. He's definitely ahead of his time in some ways, and another time it's, well, I wish we saw some of these like techniques a little bit more in recent maps, but we don't really see them as much. So
Yeah, it was a lot of very spaced streams, but also not necessarily following any kind of sensible distance snap. I mean, you could say that maps don't do that these days as well, but it was for the era, it was egregious. Like we just didn't know what was going on in his mind.
yeah, something I like to see in like 2009 was a lot of mappers figured out, oh, we can actually get around stringent distance snap requirements by new comboing more often. One of my favorite mappers, Starrod Kirby 86, big proponent of that.
Yep. Yeah, and I that's us in a nutshell, is people trying to find the it's not even us, it's every game in a nutshell. People trying to find the exploits in the game. That's like, for the top echelon of players, most of them are looking to get that edge on everyone else, right? That's just how online gaming works, and I think it's the same with us mapping and us players as well. It's always looking for that edge. That's kind of why we have dynamic changing the ranking criteria, changing the PP criteria to try and keep up with what people are doing in the community.
Yep.
Although it
So
definitely seems that sometimes, people are just generally going to edge that out faster than you can keep up with it. So
Yeah, I think that's generally how things work. But it's also half the fun, right? You have these cycles of people doing crazy stuff, and then that crazy stuff gets ranked, and then people are like, "Oh, this is the new thing. It's the new PP meta. The game is broken," and it's enjoyable for a certain audience of players. So
Who
I
are
don't
some of
necessarily.
the people that like stand out in your mind as having the most influence on like the mapping scene?
That's a really hard one for me to answer these days. I would need to like go back and because I guess at some point in Os's mapping history, I kind of like stopped following it as close as I used to.
mhm.
So yeah, I have like a very good knowledge of the early days of mapping, but also it's been 15 years plus, and pulling up names of people this far in the future is I'm not good with names in the first place though. But like DJ Pop, I guess, was one which everyone knows DJ Pop, obviously.
they better.
I hope so.
I guess James.
Oh man, yeah. People don't keep up with James. A lot of people don't know about James these days. So, but yeah.
Is he still around? Because he's popped his head in a few times over the last years. I don't
He
know if he's
opens the
made any
game
new
now and
maps.
then.
Yeah, okay. Have people on your friends list just to stalk when they come back?
Yeah, no ranked maps recently. I'll say that.
He made some maps in 2021. It looks like.
Oh, really?
What? Yeah, he's got a nearly 7-star map. I gotta see this.
Yeah.
What? Oh wait, I think I did see this. Because it was so surprising that someone linked it. It's
Yeah.
tricky to rank stuff like this nowadays, which is also the kind of weird and crappy part about like having been so core to original mapping. It's like if you go to get away from it from long enough, it just moves right past you, right? So, oh,
I mean,
Yeah,
that
I'll
kind
have
of.
to check that out later.
I'm kind of curious. Like, I think. Have you tried to like map or rank anything in a long time, Peppy?
I haven't, but it's like on my bucket list of things to do. The closest I got to mapping recently was the visualization that was done for the laser Christmas update, the main menu background, which I don't know how many people know, but that's just a beat map that has a visualization attached to it. That was mostly done by me, and then I passed it off to Pitchy Fat, and he basically redid the whole map in a better way than I did it. But that's my only experience with mapping, and it's not really a map, so I can't really say I've mapped recently. But yeah, I would like to get back into it. It's just about getting over that mental barrier of being like, I could be spending this time, developing the game and improving it rather than creating a single map. Mapping is time consuming.
Definitely.
Yeah.
yep.
For sure it is. I always had respect for those mappers who can make quality maps in short periods of time.
Yeah.
Full spread in a day and stuff like that.
I
for
wonder,
real.
because you're talking about getting back into mapping. How would you react to from like since it's been a while since you've mapped? How would you react to going through the ranking process for one of your maps? Like, if you made something, yeah.
I would be very interested to see, like, if I could get through it without issues being pointed out, would be my first goal. Obviously, I don't know if I would be up for mapping, the extra difficulty level. Like, I'd probably only go up to insane because I just don't have the mapping knowledge, the experience mapping anything higher. But yeah, my goal would just be to try and get it ranked without any kind of issues being pointed out. But I guess that's everyone's goal as a mapper, right? Or it should be your goal.
Yeah, well, I'm just
I don't
curious
know.
because it's like, so I mean, you're the this is your game, right? But it's like, I'm just curious to see like what kind of experience you would get in like your ranking process. Because I actually remember talking with Ephemeral, I don't know, maybe 6-7 years ago, and he was trying to get back into mapping. And we had a couple of individuals that were very passionate about mapping quality, right? So he had some of the same issues in his map that essentially those users would stop in other people's maps, and they turned a blind eye, to put it one way. So Ephemeral didn't end up pushing that map, but it just kind of revealed those characters. So just curious.
Yeah, I know there's been a few times over the last 5-6 years where Ephemeral, I've kind of given him orders to go undercover as a mapper, or I think Pishy actually pulled that off once or twice. I believe he may have gotten found out. But
he admitted it to it at COE once.
yeah, it's like the common case of community drama in the mapping scene, where we aren't actually sure from our side, because we've, over the last 5 years, I'd say, the Beatmap nominators, NAT, have kind of been driving things in their own direction without necessarily needing our approval, for the majority anyway. And sometimes that gets pushed in a way where we kind of feel like we might need to step in to fix things when the community gets very heated. And those are the kind of times when we're like, well, we are so out of touch with mapping that we need one of us to actually go into the system and see if these things that people are saying are actually true. If getting a map ranked is impossible, as impossible as people say it is these days. So yeah, I really wish I could have done that myself, but unfortunately I haven't gotten to it yet.
Yeah, I mean, part of those issues though are like just scale issues of like you
For sure,
just
yeah.
have such a large like community, and then on top of that we live in the area of social media, so outrage gets amplified, and so it brings a lot of attention to maybe not the biggest issue. So you have those things happening, and then yeah, there's a lot of things going on.
And it's very easy for, each one of us on the OS team, everyone on the OS team has come from the community, right? It's probably one of the very few unique companies or games or projects where everyone has kind of got vested interest in the game itself. And as a result, I think we all have our nostalgia for that time when we first came to the game and were active in the community and everything was, working well. Everyone was being nice to each other. Maps were getting ranked in the style that we enjoyed playing, and then come forward like 5 or 10 years where we're still in the community and trying to keep things going, and nothing's really as it was, and we're all like, if only stuff could be, how it was back then. But as you say, the scale of the game has changed. The general the way people interact over the years has changed. The way the internet, what the internet means for the world has changed. And we can't, like, there's no real way to go back. Like, one of the examples is with, as was kind of touched on earlier, we introduced the team system and we had chat to the team system, and it's like, why would anyone use this? Because everyone's already on Discord. And a lot of us in the team are like, this is like part of the problem. This is part of the problem we see, is that the communities become so split out into these small groups across, thousands or tens of thousands of Discord servers. Whereas, back in the day, we had the forums, we had the OS chat, and everyone was like this close-knit community. We weren't being infiltrated by other groups trying to push their own, social agendas on the game, even though they don't even play the game. Yeah, it's just, stuff has changed a lot, hasn't it, over the last decade or two?
Yeah, well, any agenda pushing comes from that same thing you mentioned of everyone's stuck in the time that they started at. So that's always weird because of just how much, like, when I explain it to people that haven't been around super long, of like how everything seems to repeat, it's just like, oh, it's like an Osu generation is 2 years, and Osu's been around for 18 years, so a lot of generations.
Yeah, for sure. I think, I don't know, I value the fact that everyone has this different, like, way they see the community running, and everyone's pushing for their own, end game. This is how I want things to be. It leads to discussions. It leads to potentially good outcomes. Having many opinions is what I'm trying to say.
Do you ever wonder if too much, like, is there a point where too much becomes too much and you have so many opinions that you can't actually find middle ground?
There have been quite a few cases of the team coming to like stalemates, and I think even sometimes I've had people be like, Peppy, you need to like make a call here. Like stop listening to everyone and just take over again, take the helm. So that has happened a few times, and these days I am kind of more in that mindset where I'm pushing things forward kind of as I see them happening, because we've already over the last, especially the last 2 years, we've had so many like deep discussions about community issues and direction of the game, a lot of internal discussions on how development should be done, how we work as a team, and I think we've already discussed everything that can be discussed. And as you say, there's a point where just having too many opinions or too much talk just means at the end of the day nothing is getting done. And everyone wants the best for the game, but someone really needs to push that direction at the end of the day. And I think that's only going to be me. There's no one really willing to step up.
Yeah, from my POV, it's less that you have people not willing to step up, and more that like, at least I see OS as having very flat hierarchy, and flat hierarchy, it's very hard for the amount that someone needs to do to stand up and stand above the crowd and push their direction is overwhelming. Like, feel like you saw this a little more often in like the early 2010s with like the Locktav type figures. Just due to the community size at the time, you didn't have as many people that could compete. But now it's like, for that, then with that population, you had one Locktav. Now you probably have 200 people of that like level.
It's a very good analogy there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a bit like that.
But no one can do it like Locktav. There's a reason he's still
exactly
around.
Yeah. No, we did have some strong figures in the past, and I guess that's kind of been like in the recent years, especially after Ephemeral kind of took a back seat. There hasn't been anyone really taking on that community management role. Like Kivi has stepped up; he's doing a lot, but actually pushing for forward progress on new systems, and even just keeping old systems in check. It really requires someone with an overall view of the community. It's kind of something because Ephemeral's kind of gotten involved to some extent over the last month or two, and I've kind of been giving him directions to try and take some of that role, or give me more insight into what he sees needing to happen. Like I'm trying to, because the community is definitely at a scale where managing it, I don't want to take too much credit here. I wouldn't say I'm doing a good job managing it, but even attempting to manage every aspect of the community in 2025 is basically at the point. I don't like to say things are impossible, but it's kind of at that level.
I would say,
just time-wise, any one system can be a full-time role. Like mapping itself, the mapping community is a full-time management role. If we were running a standard company, there would be multiple people sitting in on that and making it happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it probably got there. I don't know, at least 5 years ago too. So it's kind of crazy. Because I mean, Kivi's doing like an amazing job, but it's just the amount it takes to do just to keep the ship running is
just to keep
already
up, yeah.
It's already too much for one person. So it's just like forward progress on top of that. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, so that's the other thing is like recently I've been thinking like we run so many different systems these days. Like charts, spotlights. We got teams online now, playlists, multiplayer, beat maps, skinning. You know, there's so many aspects of the community, and I haven't even touched the surface there. There's so many other contests running in the background, and things that we commit to running every year. And I think it's important to take a step back and see which of these are actually benefiting the community, and also which systems are maybe at this point we're just keeping them running because they've been running to date and they're a bit stale, and maybe we can, shut them down and focus the team's time elsewhere instead.
Now you
Yeah.
say like that nobody stepped up to Ephemeral's role after he left. But realistically, do you think that is possible at this point? With how much somebody has to do to actually stand out? Like, because there absolutely are people out there, I think, that would be willing to, or probably even could do it. But standing out and putting yourself into that position where realistically you could be chosen for something like that, I'm not entirely sure how feasible that is.
Yeah, I think that's, you like really hit the nail there. Is that people see the jump to actually become an OS team member or get more involved. There's like a huge hurdle that they need to jump over to get there, and that never used to exist. And I still don't think it does exist. It's just people imagine this to be like OS is seen as a huge project these days, and maybe getting involved. Yeah, as you touched on earlier, I've always really, everyone on the team has really run the game as a flat hierarchy. We haven't really had various management tiers, so it still in theory should be very easy for anyone in the community to get involved, but just the structure of social interactions these days means that we don't really have that that staircase for people to continue up to get involved. Just the perceived effort is there, I think.
Yeah. So I can actually quote a bit from my experience. So I think by the time I got invited to apply for the GMT and ended up joining, I think by that I'd already been spending I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years contributing. It was moving on to other phases of my life. So yeah, it's kind of gotten to the point where it's like it's probably possible, but you may need to spend a literal decade of contribution or making up for that decade with lots of hours across lots of domains. So
And then there's the question of is it even the correct direction? Because there's so many community projects these days. Things which we would have originally brought into the OS ecosystem, and I would have made systems for on the OS website. People are just making their own sites these days for the contests or systems, and it works fine. We have an API in place that this can happen. So there's a question of, do we even need this kind of role? Should we just be focusing on what the community asks for, what the feature requests are for the API, and for the core systems, and just dialing back the other systems that we're running as in quotations official things, and making just alleviating ourselves of that, and having the community run the systems that they want to see run. It's how much do you trust the community versus how much do you guide the community with systems that you make, right?
yeah, and then this comes. I think it does full circle back to resources, because for example, you have the BN applications running off of a side site off of the Mappers Guild website, right? So you have all the BN and then NAT management stuff happening there. And it's just that would make more sense, because it is just supporting a core team in OS, make more sense to be on the OS website. But now that it exists and is working and is very quick to maintain, since it only goes through Pishyfat or whatever, it's now does it even make sense to do that? So it's a dilemma of yeah, maybe in the perfect world of the OS team had the resources to develop and maintain everything it needed to for the game to run, it would make sense for it to go to the website, but the practical reality, it's a bit more complicated.
Yeah, and that kind of situation is a bit frustrating for me, because I would see that stuff existing on the OS site. Just I would kind of want control over that, just so we had everything in one place, so that if someone left the community who was hosting the server, suddenly it becomes a big issue, that kind of thing. But yeah, I guess we haven't been able to keep up with what the requirements are of those increasingly complex systems. So it is what it is at this point.
Yeah, you even actually, funny enough, you even see that with Piff. So Ephemeral, I think,
Yeah.
hosts Piff on his own website. Piff 2, actually, too. So it wasn't just Piff, it's also Piff 2, which is wild. But yeah, so it is reality.
Yeah, or stuff like the love side too. Like recently, they've been trying to figure out how to migrate everything on it because the person that originally built it and was maintaining it with Clayton, he's stepping back because he was around forever. Now he's moving on, so kind of tricky to figure out just how to make sure somebody else has it safe and sound.
Someone asked in chat, what is the context in which OSStats was made? Yeah, OSStats was one of the it was a community-run project back in the early days. I used to actually give resources to community projects that wanted to get their stuff hosted but didn't have the financial means. So that was running on one of our cloud servers. It was one of 3 or 4 services which we actually supported over the years. But that kind of died off. I think people just stuff got so cheap to run that it was a non-issue going forward. And also, that's one of the sites which had direct database access before we had a proper API online. So things have kind of changed a bit. What are the other services? One of the other ones I can think of off the top of my mind was one of the multiplayer bots. I think it was a rotation bot.
We've had a lot of those over the years, but okay.
Yeah, one of the original ones was running off our servers as well.
Oh,
Yeah, there's been a few of those. I think
At
I
that
think
point,
most of them have
why wouldn't you just like kind of develop your own or whatever else, like kind of make it official instead of having a bunch of these third-party bots running around?
they built it into Laser.
I think we
Yeah,
eventually got
that's
to
one
that.
way of doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but I always like us is 50% for me about the development side of things and just figuring out how everything fits together. And I really enjoyed seeing the community projects existing. And like that was one of the main things that kept my drive, my motivation for us going is back in the early days, it was mostly about creating things around the project. It was mostly about the community creating not just beat maps, but amazing storyboards, amazing skins, stuff which was like original content, not just taking in the current top anime and making it into a skin, but actually making original stuff. And development projects were equally as common. I think maybe even more than these days. Back in the earlier days, where people would make third-party apps to make trackpads work in OS or apps to manage bitmap databases or apps to create training maps, all that kind of stuff in the early days. Those were the kind of projects that I really enjoyed seeing sprouting up from the community. So that was kind of where I was like, rather than doing stuff myself, to a certain extent, I was happy to see the community embracing the game and doing their own stuff with it.
I have my own Dan charts, just saying. So
I've been really enjoying the past year and a half-ish getting to be in the World Cup's design team because that's been a pretty cool project that developed to increase all of the original flair on the originals for the World Cup series. Kind of, what do you think about that one?
Yeah, following that has been amazing because I'm like 99% hands off with that. All I see is the featured artists, the contract side of things. So I see like which artists are coming up, but then and also I do the payments for all the design work. So I see how much money is going into that, but then and it's not like a small sum of money, right? We're putting in quite a bit of resources into that. But then seeing the actual final products that come out of that is pretty mind blowing to me. Like it's a really high bar of quality. I'm really happy to see that that's happening. It brings back that same joy from the early days of storyboards where everyone was making really cool stuff in the community.
That's really cool. Do you have like any favorite um recent ones or older ones that you can think of off the top of your head in terms of that kind of beat mapping project?
One of the recent ones really tickled my fancy, but I don't remember what it was by name. It's
Oh
kind of
no.
like I watch these once in passing and then I have to move on.
Hmm.
I'll try and find it though.
Okay, thank you.
I'll look in the background while we're talking.
Do you have a like a favorite mapper that you always come back to their maps kind of thing?
I think James is like the mapper that I have on my, you know, high rotation list, and that might be because I kind of requested a lot of beat maps from him for songs which I wanted. uh, yeah, some of the
Yeah.
old mappers, like ZZT the Fifth, Hito Shirenu,
Oh,
Carl AWP, a lot of those old mappers. Like I'm still stuck in like the 2000s era.
oh my god. Have you cleared Surupetan? Hito Shirinu Shirai's Surupetan?
I'm pretty sure I did, yeah.
Oh, that one's really tough.
Yeah. It's not that it's a hard map, right? It's just tough to get through.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that one has really low AR, right?
Yeah.
It's got low AR and it has some of the like
Because
it basically
so.
lots of this. It's like grid snap, overlap, stacking
Yes,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I
Yeah,
think that
that's
was
what one of the game mechanics I really hate is having stuff stacked back on itself, like going forward and backwards over the same pattern. So having hit circles hidden under sliders that you've just completed, that kind of thing.
Oh, don't play today's daily challenge then. Which it just ended.
Yeah,
They put a perfect stack map with hidden, and I suffered.
Oh
yeah,
no.
that's great. I know a lot of people probably agree with that, but that has not stopped me.
Nothing has stopped you, half slashed.
That was evil. It went back on itself, and I wouldn't see the circles, and I was like, oh.
has not stopped me. Yeah.
Those are the kind of like I always I see these things that mappers are doing, and then I'm looking for ways which we could fix that in terms of like game UX, changing the way we show things in the game to make the things which people are hiding make it more apparent. I guess with the assumption that if we improve the game systems, then those patterns can be less of an issue for some players. But you know,
Well-
sometimes that's just not possible. We offer so much freedom in mapping that people are always going to do stupid stuff, which we just can't fix,
And
regardless.
that's a whole skill set that people value too, is the ability to read it even if it's super confusing like that.
For sure, yeah.
Especially nowadays. It's become more popular. It used to be a lot less desired, but especially since people have become more competitive, people like to see that. But also, skinning tends to get around a lot of this. Like I have a map that fully based around these streams that overlap themselves all over the place, and so a lot of people they'll just put a skin with transparent hit circles, and now they can play it a lot more easily, and they can do that. And then others they might just want to just suffer through with like something with like opaque hit circles. So choose your own adventure.
For sure.
Do you play
And
on
then we have
default skins, Peppy, or do you use custom ones?
I mostly stick with defaults, and that's just because I see the defaults as being skins which should be usable across the board, and that you know, if I can't play with them, then why do we even have them, kind of thing. Like yeah.
Yeah.
I see them being a vehicle for driving us, and especially, you know, it's the first thing players are going to see when they get into the game.
Mm-hmm.
In previous, like with stable, you see, I've seen a lot of people introduce new players to the game, and one of the first things they say is like, "Oh, you have to download this skin to play the game." I'm like, "No, you don't. You shouldn't need to do that. That's not like a requirement." But you know, the community has come to see the stable default skin classic. as something you can't enjoy the game with. And first of all, I don't think that's the case, especially for new players coming in. It's a very readable skin, and in the 99% case, it's quite playable. But I don't know where I was going with that one.
I think a big part of it was like early on. I mean, not even early on. Within the last couple of years, even there was always that slider tail, and then at some point, I think the default skin got updated to remove or make that slider tail transparent, which makes it just so much more readable. And that was like the number one thing that people do with their skins, is that they look to get rid of that slider tail.
The
Yeah.
hit burst used to be really big too. I remember when I started playing in multiplayer and people would be calling others that skinned out their hit burst 300s. They would straight up call them cheaters, and they'd be like, "That's messed up. You shouldn't play like that."
I wonder what
Or
people will
playing
do
with like background dim on, like you're a cheater, like something like that.
What about
And that's
today
the other
where people don't
direction.
even do combo colors on their skins or slider or follow points or anything?
No, that's
Yeah.
just self-inflicted.
Yeah.
See, the other problem is from a game designer perspective, there's a certain amount of balance consideration when you have a game which allows such freedom in skinning. If you don't set any limitations, then people are going to push the boundaries and potentially push it in ways which people believe is making the game easier or harder, one way or another. And that's one of the things like transparent hit circles, changing the size of objects. We need to like keep up with what the community is doing there, because they're constantly trying to break the game using skinning. And like half of the things which we've seen as game breaking in the past have become the norm now. It's like you need to do this, otherwise you can't read maps of 2025. So it's a bit of a push and pull thing.
Yeah, but it's also funny because some of those same things make some of the older maps harder to read. So at least there are trade-offs, and then so people just play around with different skins, or they master everything with one skin still, or they just have a rotation of skins they stick to. So it's not like, oh, you just need to download a new skin for every map you play or anything like that. It's just that things like it comes down to like how players have viewed objects on the screen. So you have some players that want to just react to stuff as fast as possible, and they need as minimal clutter as possible. So they'll skin out the slider tails, they'll remove all of clutter, they'll play on high dim, they'll turn up the gamma on their monitors, stuff like this. And then it's like on the other side, it's like you lower the AR, you put a lot of objects on the screen. Now it's like start getting back to the default skin style stuff. You want opacity, you want combo colors, you want follow points, because you can actually follow everything more easily if they're through the like mess of stuff. So
Yeah, it's almost like you need a few skins on rotation that you have
Yep.
for the different map styles that you're playing.
I think you see this with the World Cup players. What they'll do is when a map gets picked, like they're always changing their skins like in between stuff as they like. I think they have. I can't remember if they have to leave the lobby to do this still, but
I don't
yeah,
believe
I know
so.
you see
You
a
can
lot
do
of that.
Control O to open the options, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that works from the match screen.
Pretty
Yes.
sure.
Yep.
So one thing I've always wanted to get implemented, and I think we'll get there eventually on Laser, is being able to see the skins people are using when you spectate them. So we can actually have, World Cups where each player's skin is conveyed in the stream.
I'm not sure
Oh,
that's a
that'd be so
good
cool.
thing. It'd be cool, but some some people
That
have bad
moderation's
skins.
gonna be
Yeah,
tricky.
moderation. Yeah.
Well,
Now skin's gone from being private to public.
Well, yeah, okay, so I have a very strong opinion on private skins. I think that they shouldn't exist, and in Laser, we're not gonna like give people the option to make their skins private. Like if you play online, then your skin is gonna be shared with the world. But on a moderation side of things, that does cause issues. So we would have to do that in the right way.
I will say I would love the ability to upload my skin as not a random link to my Dropbox. So that would be that would be a cool feature.
With the way we're pushing things forward, the way the beatmap submission system was implemented in Laser, on a very general level, basically every file is tracked by the database now, server side, and the same is going to be done for skins. It's kind of what Laser does internally, is like a single file on disk can be used by multiple beatmaps and multiple skins at once. We're doing the same server side, so at some point in the future, Laser will probably start uploading your skin in the background, and then you could just have a single button on your profile being like update my skin, and we could have a system where your profile would just have your current skin, which you could share with others, something like that.
And so you're saying that basically NSFW skins are just banned in Laser.
I would. I don't know. Is that a very common thing these days?
I think
it has
it's-
gotten less common. I
I
will
would hope
say
it's
that.
an edge case.
No, I don't
okay,
think
so
it's an edge case.
It's not an edge case, but it's not as normalized as it used to be. I mean, you're talking about when DJ Pop was ranking maps, like that. It was normalized back then. Now,
Well,
not so much. Like,
Okay, but if like, so imagine that the skin sharing system would limit which components of the skin are shared. So maybe it wouldn't share the results screen. I think that's where a lot of the NSFW content would be, and maybe also things like the combo pass, combo fail, all those like extra
Yeah.
things which people put stupid stuff on wouldn't need to be shared. It's more about the gameplay elements, just to see how people are playing.
that would be a lot better. Obviously, it's always still going to be an abuse vector, but it's going to be much more limited and stuff like combo bursts too, like and maybe hit sounds. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think it's as popular to have moaning hit sounds as it used to be, but that was,
Oh
OS
my
has gone
God.
through a
Combo
lot of
breaks.
evolution. I'm just saying.
I don't think I've seen moaning hit sounds yet. That sounds someone's gonna have to link me a video later.
The combo
There
break
was
sound.
they did it on, like, there was a song that got, I think you asked to delete it, the Chaos Made song or whatever. I know at one point I had a version of that song, like a map of that song that had a
hit
skin
sounds.
that had moaning hit sounds on it.
Oh,
Okay.
no.
Yeah,
Stop.
this was like ancient. This is like 10 years ago. So it's not as common now because a lot of people get too embarrassed to play OS or talk about it with that history. So the community lately has evolved away from that, but obviously
so
still
fun.
have immature children running around. So
Yeah.
There are some young people playing Osu these days for sure. I mean, and
Oh,
Bass
speaking
too,
of
but
the default skin, when are we switching out Peppy Don with Mocha? Just saying.
Yeah.
ask the question again, Avi.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Is that an
what-
actual question?
Yes. When are we switching out Peppy Don with? When is there going to be an official Mocha? Come on.
I feel like a design was actually made for that at some point, or maybe it was the catch one. I think we did have a user catcher. Like, has that been implemented in Laser? I've lost track.
We've had the Yuzu Catcher in stable for forever, yeah. But not the newer
Okay,
design.
no,
No.
there was a
It
new
used to be like
design.
Delete Beat Agent or something.
Yeah. No, there was actually a new one made for Laser, but let me just double check, but I don't think it's in the client yet. As for Taiko, that's an interesting one. I guess it's going to be about someone actually making the artwork for it, or us commissioning someone to make the artwork.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the kind of thing like, in the past we would have people on the team which are like, Taiko aficionados, and they would actually push for these changes. But right now, we're so busy like just keeping up with the changes we're trying to make that there isn't really anyone. And that's kind of what I was touching on earlier with ephemeral. Like, we need someone taking on the role of pushing for, crazy new shit that wouldn't happen without someone taking that initiative in the first place. Things like updating graphics, things like updating combo bursts. think combo bursts and combo fire. I thought that was mentioned in chat. These kinds of things, getting them back in laser. It's like, yeah, we could bring back the old version, but it would be really nice to update the designs as well.
Yeah, the old combo fire looked kind of 2003.
The old combo
2007.
fire, I think. So that was back when I didn't even like shaders were just coming into existence. Like graphics cards just supported the concept of shaders. I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds cool. So I downloaded like, I think NVIDIA had a shader toy application with just like a heap of sample shaders, and there was a fire one. I'm like, oh yeah, I can probably use that. So I just pulled down their code and put that straight in OS, and that is what combo fire is. It's nothing custom. It's just coming straight from the sample library.
Is there anything
So
like that in the current games that were just you found it somewhere and it just kind of stayed for some reason?
I mean, a lot of the default skin stuff is obviously from Owendan's skin. I redid it in Photoshop, basically just tracing over the original assets. A lot of the sound effects in Stable are Yamaha XG sounds. I had a piano, a keyboard, and I was generating a lot of the samples myself just by mixing the percussion sounds together. A lot of the like they have like effect sound banks with all like applause and fireworks and stuff. So yeah, if you ever hear a Yamaha XG piano's sound set, you can probably spot a lot of our samples from that. What
That
else?
is really cool.
Yeah, it's always kind of how it works though, right? You use things which you have access to and hopefully are licensed correctly.
Yeah, hopefully.
You just
Well,
gotta
now
pray
I'm
that
gonna have to
nobody
go
finds
through
out.
some Yamaha stuff.
Yeah, combo fire. I would really like to get a laser styled combo fire going. I don't have anything envisaged in my mind though. We really need like good designers to work on the game, like people in the community which are willing to come up with innovative new designs and push for stuff to change in the graphics department. We've been kind of lacking on that. And we have like Flight on board, but Flight is like just trying to mangle mangle his existing designs into something which the community can accept, and we're so backlogged there that nothing really new is happening. The World Cup stuff, as you said earlier, the design work there has been really amazing. That's led by Sakura, I guess. So that's been good to see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sakura's been super amazing about that. In Flight's case, I remember he used to post previews on like, oh my god, on Tumblr?
Yeah.
And that was wild back then. A lot's changed since those teasers all the way then.
Tumblr's a throwback.
Tumblr still exists, doesn't it? It's not really used much, but
Yeah,
I think I still
basically.
have a few sites running off it.
I mean, Skype is still running, but nobody uses that.
Businesses use Skype.
Businesses that live in 2005?
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what some businesses do. They just stay
That's
20
fair.
years behind.
There was
You
an
know-
era where most of the OS community existed on Skype, right?
Yeah.
That
So,
was like
when-
how we did voice calls.
I'm pretty sure that like air traffic control still lives on MS-DOS.
Oh, goodness.
What?
That's not surprising.
Yeah, they live in like
Yeah.
wicked old system, or maybe it's like Windows 95 or something like that, like something ancient. And that's just what our air
Yeah.
traffic
Outbreak
control
it.
system works on.
That sounds like the government.
I mean, like the Department of Defense and like all these things, they developed so many systems that are dependent on it and they're not connected to the internet, right? So they're actually probably more secure than a newer operating
Yeah,
system would be.
Exactly. If it works, right?
Yeah. Whew. All right. So there was actually a viewer question we got that I wanted to come back to. So do you have any, Peppy? Do you have any plans to, or ideas, or desire to incentivize players to engage with newer map sets?
Is there a perspective that players are not engaging as much as previously?
Yes.
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 Very much so,
Yeah.
yes.
I was hinting a bit towards this when we were talking about multiplayer, but yeah, I think Nafi and White have plenty to say on this.
Well, I think it's just like the general sentiment is the play counts on maps have gone dramatically downhill in the last several years. Part of that is the overabundance of maps. There's just so many out there now. But I think there's a huge belief that modern maps are just not as good as they used to be as older maps. And then like you have mappers over here being like, well, to us the maps are better, and there's a lot of options out there, right? And, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, there's not any PP maps getting ranked. And it's like there's still a bunch of those getting ranked, but people aren't finding them. They're not, you know, playing the maps to actually find them. So that's kind of this constant back and forth between the player community and the mapping community that we've just seen ad nauseum for the last, I don't know, several years.
Or
Yeah.
even like, for like a mapper, like I would used to map a bunch of obscure songs, and just because it was a ranked map, a lot of people would play it, and that would be really exciting because people would discover the music I like. But that's not the case anymore. Either your map has to be super hyper optimized towards what people are scoring highly on, or it has to be of like a pre-existing really popular song, because that's the only way people are gonna discover that your map exists.
Yeah, that's a hard one, isn't it?
Mhm.
I think that's again, it's an issue of scale. That's just where we are. The paths forward, like the paths which I've been kind of pushing for, things like the daily challenge, where we can actually try and expose these maps which were otherwise, going under the radar. I think systems like that existing are important and maybe going to be more important to players if there's as you seem to allude to, if there's players which are looking for these maps which aren't necessarily just the general, the fire hose flow of the beatmap listing, having these discovery elements is going to increasingly get more important. And that's given that we don't intend to change the ranking criteria. If we're going to keep allowing maps to be ranked as they are currently, because the other direction obviously would be to restrict the flow more, increase the bar of quality, or be more subjective about which maps are ranked. I don't really see that as being the path forward, not in my eyes anyway. So having systems like playlists, spotlights, daily challenge, and another one which is almost online is user tags for beatmaps, where
Woo! Woo!
it's actually being implemented off website. We're just working on the laser portion of it. Unfortunately, it's going to be laser only because it's a client kind of implementation. But it means when you finish a beatmap, you will now be able to select tags and upvote existing tags on beatmaps. And I think that's going to help a lot with discovery. Like it's going to, I see it like, for me, it's going to be a huge system for me because it's something people can interact with after they play a beatmap. It gives you one more reason to play a beatmap, or go back and play the beatmaps that you used to like and correctly tag them. So we're going to make it so you can only add tags after you play. So you do need to play through the whole beatmap, and probably with no fail off or something. But yeah, that's about all I have to say on that, I think.
I actually love that because that's actually a feature I've been wanting for like at least 6 years. So that's exciting.
And I think it comes at a good time because the that which site was it, OSDB or whatever?
OMDB. Yes.
OMDB is shutting down.
Yes.
They actually
Yes.
passed us their full database of tags, so I think we're going to seed the database with their tags to get things in a good initial state.
Yeah, their tags are probably a good thing. I know some of their user base probably not going to be as happy because with the play count requirement, that means that they would actually have to play the maps. Because the thing is, it's like, we saw this with the initial version of the Loved system, where mappers there's always a vocal group of mappers that does not like giving the reins to the player-based community in like any sort of appraisal of their maps. also any sort of organization of them at all.
Yeah.
So, but I do think it's a good thing. I think those mappers are kind of out of line when they say that. So I'll be on the
Well,
record
I mean,
for that.
if you're posting content online, it's kind of an expectation that people are allowed to criticize it.
Yeah, or
critique
sort
it.
it, or view it from whatever.
Exactly.
thing.
Yeah.
So that's cool. There's something else I thought of. At one point, like there was a thing about the bundled beat maps. Where they were static for a while, and then it looked like some of the things that made it into the Mappers Guild got put into like a pool where if you download the client, you randomly get several of the sets with like an easy difficulty. But I don't know if that set list has been updated. Are there any plans to maintain that?
I think that's the kind of thing we should be probably updating every 6 months or so. But which is to say, I don't think it has been yet. And to make that happen, it's probably going to be either me or Pishy Fat setting a scheduled calendar entry to make it updated, because Pishy is behind that list, obviously.
Mhm.
And yeah, as you say, it was based on featured artist having a certain spread of difficulties, and I think it was Mappers Guild specific.
Yeah. Pitchy's a guy that will get it done if he has access. So I'm believing. So
Sorry, I went this whole time and didn't give Fishy enough credit. He's like one of the remaining people in the community which is still pushing for. He's doing his best, like
Yeah.
as far as innovation and keeping things running. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Like, in the vein of like community figures coming up, one of the biggest characteristics of people that have the influence to really drive things is like, do they have enough ties between both the community and also the internal ops sorts of teams to be able to actually push things through? Pishy's one of the rare ones that did actually come up in the past 5 or so years. But I think Heavy's one of the newer ones, but yeah, those flow people is small flow, I should say.
Yeah, and I mean I really want to see more people get involved, if anything. And like that's kind of why I made the OS Dev Discord, because the hope was that people would jump in and kind of, you know, get more involved in the community, and it's worked to a certain degree there. But I don't know. I it's just hard to get a competent group of people together in one place these days. Everyone's so spread out. Like,
What would you say that
okay,
somebody trying to get involved could do that would be like helpful? That isn't necessarily development, because there's always dev work to do and it's open source, right? But a lot of people want to contribute but aren't developers.
yeah, and it's a really hard one, and it gets harder as the years go on, because usually like back 10 years ago, people asked this same question, right? And the thing I would tell them is just do cool shit, make stuff happen in the community. But coming forward 10 years, most of the cool stuff that could happen has already been done once or many times. So, you know, it's just, I think it comes, this isn't a scale issue, this is just a chronological, it's a time issue, which is that the game has been running so long that a lot of things just feel stale because they've existed for too long, or people have gotten used to things happening and they're no longer as, you know, magically new and cool as they used to be. So it's a hard one to answer for me. Getting involved in community projects is probably still the best way in. Just looking at what's happening on Discord, the stuff going on in the wiki channel, in the love channel, all the current active channels, the tournaments, I guess, which has been a more active thing recently with tournament committee ongoing issues. And like if you have the skills to create third-party systems, then yeah, it works. I mean, people have made some really amazing stuff even in the very recent years, and where we can't do stuff officially, third-party systems existing is like the best case scenario. We'll keep expanding the API to keep up with them as well. getting in touch with the team. I think people need to realize that it's so easy to reach out to me. Like I'm hesitant to even say this again because my email has been the throughput for my email has actually been increasing over the last few months. So I think I've been saying it too much, but you can just email me with like anything you want and you'll definitely get a response. So like even if you can't get in touch with anyone else on the team, which I'd like to say is likely not the case because I know a lot of the other devs on the team have their DMs open and will actively respond to you. The bar of getting in touch with us just to get a question answered or ask whether something could exist or whether you could get involved in a system is pretty low.
Most definitely. I know Pishy Fat has helped me a ton with, doing the Vocaloid mapping contest and such. So huge resources
Fishy
around.
Fat has the patience to listen to me and Lucent endlessly correcting him on the metadata of one of the listings with like hundreds of tracks. So always appreciate that.
I really appreciate that back in the day when I would open multiple OSU web issues a day, nobody ever yelled at me for opening too many issues. Because I was just out there reading the feed every day and memorizing every issue that was posted. And then anything that was not posted, I would always post. Although I find that a little more confusing in Laser because I can't just make an issue. I have to make like a bug report or a feature request. And like when it comes to parody, it's neither of those. And I'm like, oh, where do I go? And sometimes stuff like that is kind of confusing.
Yeah, and from our end, like we appreciate all the issues being reported, and like we have to do our best not to get annoyed at the amount of issues reported. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's like the number of open issues is I think still going up, like in the upwards trend. So we're not keeping up with the incoming flow of bug reports and feature requests and everything. It's it's a bit overwhelming as a developer, but I think one by one, all of the team has just gotten used to that being the case. Like there's just no way we can keep up and just do our best to. The number one thing is prioritizing, right? We have limited hours and we need to figure out which of these issues are most important to the users.
Most definitely.
Yeah, and that just comes down to like being able to organize so much information coming at you at once, which I can't even imagine just trying to keep up with mappers. So
All right. So we're coming up on about 2 hours here. So we're gonna sort of start winding down. But we did have a couple questions from the community that we were gonna ask, some basic ones. So one of them was, what is the first and latest Vocaloid you listened to? I guess that's 2 questions in one.
Vocaloid song, yeah.
Yeah, Vocaloid
Vocaloid
sorry.
song.
It's our
Okay, so
obligation to ask.
I probably shouldn't talk too much about Vocaloid because, okay, so Hatsune Miku is the only one I've really listened to, and a lot of Miku tracks I just can't listen to. Like I find the voice, just the tonality of it really hits my ear in the wrong way. So the ones I do listen to are cases where people have done a very good job, not necessarily equalizing, but like post-affecting the Vocaloid voice to make it very nice to the ear. I couldn't tell you which artists that I would recommend in terms of making Vocaloid good. It's a very subjective thing to say, right? But I'll link some afterwards, and you can post them somewhere if you want.
Oh, sweet, thank you.
That would be great.
But yeah, I've
listened to any of
probably
them
heard other
recently?
Vocaloids. I can't name them. I know there's a Ren guy, right?
Yeah, maybe.
a Ren. Nafi's dying.
That's just the correct reading of his name. Don't worry about it.
Just combining Rin and Len. I love it.
I mean, hey, that is how Karen got their name, right? Like they were initially named Kagami and Ren, which was the portmanteau of those two. So,
Oh, that's crazy.
yeah.
That's funny. And then, I guess words. Wow, holy cow.
Oh, there's
The-
two. There's a Ren and a Rin and a Len. Okay,
yeah.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yep.
You're not the first to
I
do
was
that. Don't
halfway.
worry. Don't worry. Yeah.
And that more or less answers the second question, which was what your favorite Vocaloid is.
Just none.
Yeah, I think design wise, I'm a Miku fan.
Okay.
Nice. All right.
The leak really sells it.
The leak does really sell it. You should see some of the images. There was a really great leak image. Maybe Nafi, you can grab it real quick.
Okay, I'll go find it and send it to you later.
Oh yes.
But
But,
with that said,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you, Peppy, for joining us. We'll give you some time back in your day after taking 2 hours of it.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks for having me on. It was good fun.
Thanks for joining us first thing in the morning.
No worries.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in to watch. You can find the VOD on our YouTube, and of course, join the community for participating in our events and such. We have some fun stuff coming up soon-ish. But all right. Any closing words, /Nafi or Peppy?
I'm good. I'm out of words. So
Out of
Thanks,
words.
Peppy, for making my favorite game. Thank you, and have a good day.
yeah, it's been a
Thanks
pleasure.
to all of you for being so involved in the community and making things like this happen. It's awesome.
Well, thank you for being supportive of it. It's not often that devs, I think, are so involved with the community and allow for members to contribute in such meaningful ways.
Yeah.
That's what we do at us.
Let's go. Alrighty. Well, farewell, everyone.
Bye.
Yep.
Goodbye.